So in their attempt to make the story quests more accessible, Treyarch has sacrificed the difficulty of the survival aspect of Cold War Zombies. Now I think in a lot of aspects they've had more success with it in this game than in Black Ops 4, but I do think the game would benefit a lot if there was the core mode for playing for quests and story, and then there was a hardcore mode for survival. And so today what I want to talk about is what exactly a hardcore mode in Cold War Zombies could look like, and how it would differ from the core mode. The first thing I feel like a hardcore mode would need is a 4 perk limit. Now having every perk is great because it makes the Easter eggs a lot more accessible, but when you're playing simply for survival and high rounds, having every perk available to you at all times is a little overpowered. I feel like all these perks, especially at their tier 5 upgrades, you just start to become an unstoppable force. And it doesn't help that 2 of them can also be used as a self-revive in addition to the self-revive. I think limiting it back to 4 in a hardcore mode would make you put more thought into which perks you're going to pick, and would add extra challenge to the mode. And I don't believe that crutch perks would be an issue in this game. You can play without Juggernog by investing more into armor early. You could replace Speed Cola by using the fast reload attachments. You know, stuff like that. The perks, they may be very powerful on their own, but I feel like they're all pretty well balanced, and that you could make various combinations of 4 and still have the game be just as playable. And if they do decide to add in the perk limit, I feel like upon down you should lose all 4, because losing just 1 per down would be kind of weird. I think if you're only going to have 4, you should lose all 4 if you go down. And I don't know, maybe they'd want to look at the pricing of the perks in a hardcore mode if you could only have 4. Maybe they want to keep the system where the price increases the more you buy, but it only goes up so much, so maybe each perk would need its own individual pricing then. I don't know, I feel like either way could work just fine. I guess it would be up to them. The other thing I think a hardcore mode would need is increased damage in the early rounds. I've talked about this a lot. I think 5 hits to down from rounds 1 to 10 is kind of absurd and creates absolutely no tension in these early rounds. I personally would like if it was a 2 hit down until you got Juggernog, but realistically it would probably be a 3 hit down if they did actually do this. However, I still think that the zombie damage should still increase in the 40s or 50s, whatever it is, just to make those high rounds a little more challenging. And speaking of the higher rounds, there should be no health cap in a hardcore mode. I don't really understand the point of a health cap to begin with. In a game about surviving endless waves that are constantly increasing in difficulty, I don't really get why they kind of cap off the difficulty in the 40s or 50s. I do kind of understand that a health cap does make it so that if your quest ends up running too long, it can still be completable at much later rounds. Not that I think anyone would ever have their quests running into 40, 50, 60s, but if they wanted to make a hardcore mode with a much greater focus on survival rather than quests, they should remove the health cap. I think that it would be good if salvage and equipment drops were rarer. That way it would take more time to upgrade your weapons and armor, and you wouldn't have as many explosives to rely on to kill zombies for you. I also think there should be no ammo drops in a hardcore mode. I think there's too many already in this game, and like I've said before, there's really no ammo management. So I think removing those completely, except for when you have that certain tier upgrade on Mule Kick, would add an extra layer of difficulty to the game. As for the armor drops, I guess it could go either way. I feel like they're rare enough that you can't really rely on them anyway to repair your armor. But by making them rare, it makes it more challenging anyway, so that's kind of the point of a hardcore mode. I think if they want to make it a more bare-bones experience, they could take away field upgrades and starting weapons, although I feel like that isn't as important as some of the other things I've mentioned. The self-revive, I definitely don't think you should spawn with it. I feel like it would be better if it just wasn't in there at all, and you had to rely on perks for self-revives rather than a piece of equipment, but I feel like it's more realistic that you just simply wouldn't spawn with it. And finally, for the skill upgrades, I'm kind of conflicted. There are some of which that I think a survival-based hardcore mode would be better off without, like spawning with a Bowie knife or saving your shot with an RPG or special weapon. Field upgrades and alternate ammo types, I feel like it could go either way, whether or not they let you keep those skill upgrades on. But for perks, I feel like it's better that they let you take those into a hardcore mode, especially if there's going to be a 4 perk limit. I kind of like the idea of these perks being really overpowered, but limited only to 4. And having the maxed out abilities on all the perks makes them so diverse from one another. I feel like it's better with the perks upgraded all the way. And obviously in my ideal hardcore mode, the map quests would still be doable, just a little harder with all the extra restrictions on you. But yeah, those are just my quick thoughts on how a theoretical hardcore mode would differ from regular core mode in Cold War Zombies. The idea of this was to try and think of ways that the game could prioritize the survival style of gameplay over the story quest style. And don't get me wrong, I do like Cold War Zombies. I do like playing for the quests, but I can't agree that high rounding and just survival style is a lot easier than it probably should be, and I think it would be very beneficial if they just kind of had two separate game modes for the two styles of play.